What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. It's been a while since we made a champion history video, but I actually really enjoyed making them in the past, so today we are once again revisiting the idea of the full history of a champion and featuring someone that's been in the game since the very beginning, with Jax. So leave a like if you enjoyed the video or a dislike if you didn't. And our journey through Jax's history starts off with his release, or rather the release of League of Legends itself, as Jax was one of the original 17 champions available to play in the alpha stage of League of Legends. That was over 7 years ago, back on the 21st of February 2009. His lore is a bit outdated now and is kind of not really considered canon by Riot, but originally he was a self-proclaimed Grand Master at Arms, who fought 152 times in the arena and never lost once. The organizer of the League of Legends, the Institute of War, banned Jax from competing, worried that the peace would be disturbed by a fighter who was unbeatable. Jax's scores of fans eventually managed to force the Institute to relent, but with one condition: Jax wasn't allowed to use a real weapon. The Institute gave him a list of weapons they deemed suitable: a lamppost, a chicken's foot, a spatula, and a fishing rod. It's some of our favorite lore in the game, so we really hope he keeps some of it if Riot ever decides to give him a fully fleshed out update. Now Jax's kit has remained fairly similar in terms of his playstyle throughout the years. He's always been a fighter wanting to get up close and personal. But his current kit is extremely different from the original release. His kit during beta was quite interesting, with a reliance on the now removed dodge mechanic. The passive was Weapon Mastery, giving him bonus damage based on his items, which really complements his theme as a champion based on scaling over the course of the game and being a master of weapons. His Q and W were actually switched, Q being Empower and W being Leap Strike, but after release they were switched around to the current setup during patch 61. Empower wasn't the single target ability we know it as now as well. Instead, it would cleave enemies in front of Jax, and follow-up cleaves would deal more damage with increased range. His E was still called Counter Strike, but instead of him avoiding auto attacks, it used to increase his dodge chance. Kind of the same ability, but the old Counter Strike let Jax focus on dodge chance to avoid massive amounts of damage. As well, every time he dodged an attack, he could briefly stun nearby enemies. His ultimate at the time was Relentless Assault, draining his mana on attack similar to Muramana, but increasing his damage on consecutive attacks along with boosting his attack speed. So basically imagine Jax if he stunned more often and could hit multiple opponents at once instead of only one, as well as dodging attacks constantly. Pretty insane. He's definitely one of the more notable beta champions in terms of just raw power. Jax received his first gameplay update on patch 75. His passive was reworked to increase his health based on how much attack damage or ability power he had from his items, probably an attempt to tone down his damage a little bit, but give him a little bit of a trade-off in tankiness. He also got a pretty sweet change to Leap Strike that let him target allies with it, letting him jump to safety or join in on fights way more reliably. Empower was causing some issues with his power level, so it was changed to give him bonus damage to all nearby enemies, rather than the crazy scaling Empower that he had before. It was still pretty spammable though, with only a 1-second cooldown at all ranks, so he could still deal tons of damage to multiple targets in a fight. And this was just the start of Jax's tweaks though. Riot was having a pretty hard time finding a fair place for Jax to be in terms of balance. And in this gameplay update, Jax's ultimate was also converted into a passive, allowing him to deal bonus damage on attacks and giving Jax bonus attack speed that stacked up as he continued to attack as well. You might have tried playing full AP Jax before. It's a pretty fun way to play the champion, and it's a pretty interesting off-meta build. Back in the day though, AP Jax was the meta build, and man, it was just insane. And it didn't exactly agree with where Riot wanted to be because his AP ratios were just through the roof, and they eventually nerfed it pretty hard on patch 82, bringing us one step closer to the Jax that we're all familiar with, the hybrid bruiser playstyle of Jax, although we still had an emphasis on area of effect damage up to this point. This only marked the start of a lot of AP ratio nerfs that Jax would get hit with in the future, preventing him from becoming a bursty AP assassin, and keeping him as that fighter kind of bruiser that wanted to keep auto-attacking on targets as much as possible. Patch 103 brought with it Riot's final decision on the direction they wanted to take Jax, and his second gameplay update. Jax's area of effect capabilities were removed pretty much completely in favor of raw single target DPS. This marks the start of Jax's reign as one of the best duelists in the game, sporting his new Empower, the single target auto attack reset that he still has today. His ultimate was changed once more too, giving him stacking magic resistance based on his dodge chance. a stat that Jax still heavily relied on and abused pretty hard at the time in his kit. And this gameplay update also turned his passive ultimate into one with a bonus effect if he reactivated it, lasting a short while, usually long enough to start and end a quick brawl. Jax wasn't safe from changes yet though, as Riot eventually decided that dodge was a stat that they wanted to remove from the game, believing that it was relatively anti-fun to play against, so it was phased out over a period of time that began on patch 124. Jax was caught in the crossfire, although because of his reliance on the dodge mechanic, it was decided that he would retain some of it as an individual characteristic, and he was allowed to keep the mechanic as part of his new E Counter-Strike. This was happening during patch 132, and marked the biggest change in Jax's history. A full rework that left Jax in a state pretty close to what we're familiar with now. As well, this was the patch that dodge had finally been removed completely from the game. Although dodge started being phased out on patch 124, it wasn't until patch 132, which was the patch of the Jax update, that dodge had finally been completely removed. And to compensate for losing access to dodge chance, he was given more base health along with more health and armor per level. A lot of early game power was shifted from his W onto his Q, giving his leap strike way more base damage, although it didn't hurt his empower too much thanks to the reduced cooldowns. His E Counter-Strike was remade into one of the only remaining dodge type abilities in the entire game. It allowed him to avoid auto attacks for a couple of seconds before stunning and damaging nearby enemies, increasing the damage dealt based on how many attacks he avoided. His passive was updated to give him attack speed stacks for each consecutive auto attack he landed, and he was given a brand new ultimate, Grandmaster's Might. The new ultimate was similar to the current Jax ultimate, giving him more bonus damage on every third strike passively, along with bonus attack damage and ability power when he activates Grandmaster's Might, based on how much AD or AP he already had from items. Jax received a change in patch 135 that changed those offensive stats from the active portion of his ultimate into armor and magic resistance instead, giving him back a more defensive approach to the game and really rewarding him for building a hybrid set of items. This helped slow down some of that insane snowball power that Jax was known for. He just got so much more value out of his items, and his raw damage was really hard to deal with. So where did Riot go from here with Jax? Well, the answer is actually pretty much nowhere. The third gameplay update was one of the most successful reworks in the history of League of Legends actually. Jax would go on to be completely unchanged for almost 2 seasons straight, not a single buff or a nerf. And not once was he too powerful or too weak during that time. He became a staple top laner throughout this time, one that every aspiring top main should learn to play, even if he wasn't necessarily strong enough to pull it out in every matchup. The changes that did eventually come 2 years later were all extremely small ones too. Riot was happy with both his power and the way Jax felt to play, so they didn't want to risk damaging that balance with random changes. The first change was actually a global change as a result of nerfs to armor runes, so it honestly kind of doesn't even count. And this change saw him getting a tiny buff to his starting armor stat to compensate alongside pretty much every other champion in the game that received the same thing. No champion stays without small tweaks forever though, as the rest of the game is still evolving and item buffs and indirect changes can make a champion more or less powerful by itself, but the fact that Jax was completely unchanged, not a single buff or nerf, not even minor ones for about 2 years, just really speaks to the volume of how truly successful that third Jax rework actually was. And it's definitely one of the underrated updates that happened in League of Legends. In fact, it might be one of the best reworks to have ever happened. Eventually though, Jax was hit with a few minor stat nerfs as a result of other changes in the game on patch 4.11, including his base health, health per level, and armor. He was just a little bit too strong early on for such an amazing scaling champion and had become quite a dominant pick in the meta. He kind of fell back into the numbers game from season 3 onwards. Riot had settled on his final kit and now it was just a case of maybe tuning him occasionally to keep him in line. Patch 4.21 saw an improvement to Counter-Strike, lowering the cooldown at all ranks, so that a player with good timing could really make the most of it and help him survive tough lanes with the lower resistances from his previous change. His ultimate was also tweaked a little bit at this point, taking away some of the base magic resist increases on activation, along with reducing his base armor increase, although it did raise the AD ratio slightly to reward focusing on attack damage builds. And once again, Jax was in a really solid place balance-wise. He saw no updates at all until halfway through Season 5, when his age was starting to show a bit. Jax's kit is relatively simple, and a lot of the new champion releases feature new mechanics and strengths that Jax needed raw numbers to deal with. He received a few minor buffs over the patches in Season 5 to help him survive and scale up. the first being on patch 5.12 with a buff to the magic resistance and armor given by his ultimate at all ranks. This increased both stats by 10, 15, and 20 per each rank respectively, which is actually quite a big improvement and really solidified his ultimate ranks as his core power spikes outside of his item purchases. His Counter-Strike mana cost was also reduced in the early game on patch 5.17, as picking Jax into certain lanes was almost guaranteed to end badly. Ranged poke champions were starting to gain popularity and Jax really needed a way to deal with those threats, and the reduced mana cost meant he could use his Counter-Strike defensively or offensively more often without needing to worry as much about running out of resources, but it still wasn't far enough. Jax then received a change that was focused on improving his early game a little bit, a bump up to his base mana and a reduction to his mana growth per level on patch 522. Although this meant he was worse off after hitting the max level, it again gave him the opportunity to use Leap Strike and Counter Strike more often in lane and really rewarded Jax players who knew when the ideal points to use those abilities were. And finally we get to Season 6, the modern age of League of Legends, and two interesting changes to Jax's ultimate, Relentless Assault. These changes were really based around the new Devourer / Ginsu's Rageblade item, and as this item was just so good on Jax, he needed his attack speed to be lowered a little bit to compensate for this new core. Patch 6.3 decreased his attack speed per stack for each level of his ultimate, but he was given a new cap of 8 stacks instead, rather than 6. This meant that in shorter fights Jax was at a little bit more of a disadvantage, but as a fight drew out longer and he kept attacking, he would just become even stronger, with a maximum of 88% bonus attack speed, which is pretty damn awesome. And here we are at the end of Jax's timeline finally, with one final change, a quality of life improvement that Jax players had been hoping to see for a long time. In patch 6.11 his Relentless Assault was updated to cause stacks to drop off one at a time, rather than all at once, and this made it way easier for Jax to stay at a high number of stacks, especially when wanting to use that crazy attack speed to split push and tear down towers. And there you have it, from alpha to today. We really hope you enjoyed this glimpse into Jax's history and the changes he's been through as he grew into the amazing split pusher and duelist we know him as today. If you want to see more videos like this, leave us a comment and tell us who you'd like to hear about next. And looks like that's going to be it from me. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.